Hi everyone, how you going? I'll just wait for Facebook to do its thing, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about International Women's Day. Yeah, we'll have a bit of a chat. Just sitting here thinking about International Women's Day. Something that people like me have never been a part of, because we've never been included in the conversation. Women that are on Social Security, single parents, women with disabilities, women living in poverty, women who have been homeless. We don't get invited to these sort of things. You know what I mean? To me, it's never been, it's just, you know, what is International Women's Day? I don't know. Something that other women go and have fancy breakfasts for, or something, I don't know. I thought we'd have a chat about this, because let's be honest here. The government doesn't value women in this country. That is so obvious. And because the government doesn't value women, we have a lot of misogyny in our society, and we have a lot of people who also don't value women. And that shows through in social media, right? The amount of trolling you get, the way you get treated, right? And I was just thinking, well, I'll have a chat. I'm a person who survived, how can I put it? A very extreme sexual assault. Then having to deal with that without proper supports all throughout my life. No help with the trauma. No access to the money to be able to pay for the right people to help. So you just put a can of, put that can of worms away and deal with it. Get over it, I was told. You know. I can remember back then, I had 2 weeks to get over it. Then I was sent back to school. And then I had to bullshit about the bruises and this and that and all the other. And I was just expected to just get over it. I was 12. Get over it. And then throughout life, if you dared to confide in a member of the opposite sex, you were damaged goods. That was the perception that was built from me. This is my personal thing. I don't know how it is for other people. So you're damaged goods, right? It impacts on every part of your life. But then you go through life, only if you're working, it seems to be you're valued. And even then you're not, because you're going to be abused and sexually harassed at work. I had to go through that as well. It was rife in workplaces that I worked in, and we were just expected to put up with it, you know. Smack on the ass as you walk past, and wolf whistles here and there and that. And I mean, these days, to be quite honest, if a fella did that to me now, I'm probably going to turn around and punch him straight in the gob, because, you know, you don't have to put up with it. But, and bear in mind, I'm over 50 now. I'm looking back over things over a lifetime, you know. But International Women's Day for ordinary women. What does it mean? It means nothing to me, because, like I said, we've never been included. The ordinary average woman out here is just not included. It's not a public holiday. We're not celebrated. All the work that we do is not celebrated. All the volunteer work that we do, all the unpaid work and all the caring work that we do is not valued. I see the social media attacks on carers on social media. And you still get comments of, you're lazy, get a job, you know. This fixation of you must have a job and be working for a boss to be of any value, but then you're not respected and valued in the workplace either. You can't win, can you? And it drives me nuts. I've spoken in the past about the lack of respect for motherhood, especially when it comes to sole parents, and the trolling you get from that. Right? Now we've got women on the cashless debit card. People wonder why it's so hard. I can't get women to come here and do videos and tell you what it's all about. Because if they're single parents, when they have come out into the media, they've been absolutely hammered. Right? The assumption that if a woman's got more than, you know, this has happened to a couple of people I know that had 5 children. The assumption automatically is, oh, she should have closed her legs. Oh, a single mum with 5 kids and 5 different dads. The stereotypes, the disrespect. You know, people don't know the facts behind why people are single parents. And they don't care to know the facts. They just carry on. Alright? And it just annoys me. Every day, like on TikTok or on Facebook, or not so much on Facebook recently, but TikTok on my accounts there, and on other women's accounts, there's a lovely lady that talks about mental health, and she cops it all the time too. And you know, and there's a lovely lady I've met that's a carer to both her parents and a disabled son, and she cops it all the time as well. And do you know, at 53 years of age, I'm over it. I mean, my daughter's grown up. Now she has to live in this world. You know, I think one of the most disgusting things is the lack of leadership. See, it comes from the top. When your Prime Minister doesn't respect women, doesn't stand up for women, right, doesn't protect women, and doesn't demand that men back off and stop being misogynist, and you know what I mean? Yeah, it's very, you know, in the Howard government, which was when I ended up being put on a DSP, when my ex left, and I had to go to Centrelink and sort out all the paperwork because I'd become a single mum. But I was on a DSP, so I never had to go through that route of applying for parenting payments. I just had to change things over and prove that I was now living on my own. But I got sternly reminded, because of the media at the time was going on about, oh, single mums, multiple dads, blah, blah, blah. And sitting in that office in Centrelink doing the paperwork, I got sternly reminded, you know, oh, well, you know, it's bad luck that your relationship broke down, but don't do it again. And I'm there like, what do you mean? You know? And she goes, oh, well, you know, if you get into another relationship, you have another child and it fails, the department will consider you as promiscuous. And I just about fell off my bloody chair. But that's because at the time the media was the same. All single parents were, excuse the word, it's a word I hate, sluts. That's how it's always been painted, and I hate that. It drives me nuts. And that's what we need to change, is the language at the bottom. Right? Because the poorer people and the single parents and the women with disabilities, I mean, up until this government got in, I've been on disability for a long time. There was a few times throughout my life where I had people look down their nose at me because I was on a pension, because I was never the hair and makeup brigade. I never had the nice clothes, I never had the nice jewellery, I never had the makeup, I never had the nice hairdo, right? Blah, blah, blah. You could just feel it coming off of people. But I can tell you now, I never felt it as bad until I came to Queensland. I came from South Australia. Putting your pension card over the counter for something wasn't, nobody batted an eyelid. They didn't judge, they didn't sneer. When I came to Queensland, it was very noticeable they did. And it was like, it was the first time, that was 10 years ago. And it's got so much worse since this government's been in. And the language that's been used. Now, doing this fight against the cashless debit card, I have been abused in public. I've been abused online. And I've snapped back at some of these guys and turned around and said, do you speak to your mother like that? Do you speak to your sister like that? Where do you get off thinking you can speak to a woman that you don't know in such derogatory terms? Where do you get off having such disrespect? And I think, you know, International Women's Day, until you can get the patriarchy to realise that we're real and we're not just here to make babies for them or to be kicked from pillar to post or be used up and thrown out the door when we're finished with, and then in the case of a lot of our older people at the moment that have raised families and worked hard and then ended up in their mid-50s and 60s and end up on their own and are facing homelessness after they've done so much, but they didn't come out of it with huge super funds, and they weren't born with silver spoons. You know, whatever reasons, you know, it just gets me down. It really does. You know, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of work still to be done. In 100 years, not much has changed. Women still get told what to wear, how to be, how to speak, how to look, right? You know, you're still pressured into behaving certain ways, which I don't do anymore. Simple little thing. If I'm in a supermarket or in a shopping centre and a guy's coming towards me, I don't go round him. He goes round me, or he walks into me, one or the other. You know? You know, I gave up. You know what I mean? I just, yeah, if I get hip and shouldered. I had a kid, a teenage boy, hip and shouldered me one day because I didn't move. It's something so trivial and so small. And you know, how many times have you walked and you've automatically gone around the guy and go, oh, sorry. And it's like, no more saying I'm sorry. They can walk around me for a change. Do you know what I mean? They can walk past. We don't have to get out of their way. You know what I mean? I haven't had an easy life. And the abuse that I've copped from men, I got tired of being the shit on the bottom of their shoe. Excuse my French. Right? And I opted to stay single basically 20 years ago because I just had a gut full of being treated like a possession. Or being told, don't say this, don't do that, be this, be that. It's like, oh. And I gave up. I'm me, and if people don't like me, well, there's nothing I can do about that. And, you know, if the government respected women, they wouldn't put women through what they do, cashless debit card. They wouldn't put women put they through when they become single parents, right? You know, and all the hoops you jump through and all the suspicion that the department has, you know, you're automatically doing the wrong thing. I'm over the fact that a single dad is a hero and a single mum, right, didn't take proper precautions. It's her responsibility, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Right? Whereas when it's the other way around, oh, good on you, mate, you're a hero, you're doing hard yards. Geez, it's hard, you know? And it's like, hang on, women do the same and it's not hard. They get accused of being lazy, get a job, blah, blah, blah. All right? Some of the stuff that I've been told over the last 5 years on social media during this campaign is just horrendous. And some of it's come from the way, even like the way that certain senators speak in Senate against single parents. I'm not naming names, but I can guess who. Certain redhead, you know what I mean? Or the fact that, you know, women aren't believed when it comes to sexual assault and domestic violence, and they're not taken seriously. And then they wonder why women just don't say anything and they give up. Do you know what I mean? How many women out there? I mean, I can remember when I'd just become a single mum, and the area that I lived in, 5 of us in the street were having a coffee. 4 of us had been impacted by sexual abuse of some sort. Only 1 out of the 5 of us had never had that happen. And that was 20 years ago. not much has changed. Do you know what I mean? How do we change this? Because how do you can raise your son to be a decent young man, but society, it's like my daughter, you know what I mean? You can raise your kids a certain way, but once they go out into that world, they become whatever society plays a part in, you know what I mean? I don't know how we get through. We've been trying for hundreds of years to change the patriarchy, and they just don't want to change because they're the bosses, they're the ones in control. They control the wages, they control the money, they control what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, women have come a long way in being able to do things that men can do now. And I mean, we can still go to work if you're physically able to when you get married. I mean, those sort of things have changed. But that's only changed because certain banking realised that 50% of the population was sitting at home raising children, as it should be, right? And that, there was taxes that could be paid. And a country's GDP could be improved if you could get the other half of the the population into the workforce. And then you can make businesses like private childcare instead of having mum at home looking after the kids, you know what I mean? Because, mum can be turned into a commodity too to make money for businesses and governments. And then other private operators get wealthy off of the childcare. And you look at it with our childcare, right? You look at it now. If you've got a couple and they're working their butts off full time, one wage is going to childcare. Guess whose wage is normally going to the childcare? The woman's wage. They're living in poverty. The way our social security system is set up definitely keeps women in poverty and women with disabilities in poverty. Because for a woman with disabilities, the minute you enter into a relationship that you want to live with somebody with, you lose your financial autonomy straight away. Now, you don't have much anyway because you're already struggling, but it's all of a sudden you're reliant on the other person's wage. And if it's not a very good wage, you still lose majority of your pension, if not all of your pension. And then I lived through this, and I had the wrong partner who he didn't understand. How can I put this? My parents grew up in a different era. My dad went to work. My mum went to work. When my mum got sick, my dad automatically carried on working and he cared for my mum. No whinges, no gripes, no nothing. In sickness, in health, richer and poorer. That was a different generation. They were devoted to each other and he would do anything for my mum. Come forward to when I was in my 30s, I had a man that didn't understand that, yeah, going to work, he was providing for me in the household, but he couldn't understand why he should have to provide for me. And it's worse now. Because now people judge each other based on, well, what do you do for a living? You know what I mean? It's how much money have you got in the bank? What do how much do you earn? Right? Because, when picking a partner, you want somebody who's financially viable so that you can try and buy a house or try and have a future. Being financially viable seems to have become I call it how can I say it? It shouldn't be the case, but we live in a society where being financially viable means more than two poor people getting through. I don't know. I don't know how to put it, but you know what I mean? Money is the god and everything, and it just drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. And because we've got a government that focuses on, we had Joe Hockey, lifters and leaners, right? Your social worth is based on your income source and how much money you've got as to how much value, and it's like sickening because we're not all born with silver spoons, and you can work your ass off to get somewhere, and one work injury straight out from underneath you. The whole lot goes, right? There was a thing in the ABC that they did a couple of years ago, and you could fill out this survey so you could see what percentage of income bracket you were in regards to other people in Australia. So for a single person like myself on a disability support pension, it come up as 0%. Right on the bottom, all forgotten completely. Not even 1% of the population. That, you know, little things that make you feel that you're not valued, you're not seen, you're not counted in statistics. When the government was talking about X amount of percentage of parents on parenting payments and this and that, the one chapter they left out was single parents on disability, right? That was always the same. They would make up stories of a single parent with 2 children, and they would distort the amount of money that parent's getting in Social Security, right? In order to conflate more stereotypes of welfare queens and lazy people getting money for nothing and all that sort of rubbish. But you'd never see the statistics of how many single parents out there are living with disabilities. We didn't count in the statistics at all. We don't count in the statistics. How do you think that made me feel as a single mum on a disability of 1 child? You know, because when they were talking about single parents, it was usually single parents with 2 children. So we didn't even count. Even if I'd just been a single parent with 1 child, we still didn't count the statistics and the data that they were using. And that, yeah, I know. I'm just reading comments here. It's just, I don't know, we can't change it overnight, you know what I mean? But we have to change an awful lot. Because I've got to a stage, you get to a stage in life where you don't care what other people think anymore. You don't care anymore, right? And you say, stuff it, I'm over it. But when you're a teenager, when you're in your 20s and your early 30s, the damage that's done to your self-esteem, self-worth, when you're abused by men and then other men don't take it seriously or they change their behaviour, yeah, I know. Marge says we need equity to achieve equality. Absolutely bang on. And that's what we do need. A lot of people don't realise that, you know what I mean? In 100 years we haven't been able to achieve it. Why not? Why not? In 100 years, yes, women can now play AFL and cricket and soccer and other sports, and women can go and work in workplaces that were always considered a men's domain, but they're not treated with respect. And it's automatically, you know, they're lesser. And that drives me nuts. And then if you're a single mum, well, you're really down there. And if you're a single mum on disability, well, you're really on the bottom of the pile. In International Women's Day, yeah, it's just, somebody, Narelle says here, I had to listen one night to a friend of my parents going on how single mums just had kids to get free money. Had to recently become a single mother after my husband left me to pursue another woman. Put up with years of his abuse, but I was only a single mum for the money. What money? Payments were not livable amount 24 years ago, and it's even worse now. That's right. And that's what gets me. The guy can just get up and go, and he's all right, and because he's got all his time to himself, and if he's got a full-time job, he can keep his full-time job, and he can keep going, and we're considered lazy, and we've got a 24-hour job, right? But it's not recognised. When you take your kid to the hospital and you're sitting there for, I think the longest I sat in a hospital waiting room with my daughter when she was sick was 22 hours. And I rang my ex and said, can you come and relieve? Nope, wouldn't have a bar of it. And I had a 40-kilometre drive home. And I said, oh, they don't, I don't know. I don't know where we're headed until, nothing's changed. Domestic violence is worse than ever. I don't know what to say. I really don't. And how can Scott Morrison say he protects women? Now, I cannot stand Anne Ruston and a lot of the Liberal women. They're cold. But I won't forget the fact that, there was a press conference with Anne Ruston and Scott Morrison, and they were talking about the bonking ban. And the press panned over to Anne Ruston to ask her a question from a woman's perspective. And as she went to open her mouth, Scott Morrison came in over the top of her and shut her up. Now, as much as I can't stand that woman, oh my God, he had to mansplain and talk over the top, right? He did it on national TV, right in front of her, as though she couldn't have an opinion. What was he scared of her actually saying? You know what I mean? What was he so worried about that he had to jump in and cut her off? And he showed her the utmost disrespect when he did it. Now, I can't stand that woman, right? The way she is, I watch her Senate estimates, and the way she is, and sprouting that, women fleeing domestic violence aren't being put on the card. It's like, how come 90% of the women that I've spoken to that have been put on cashless debit card early in the piece, I couldn't get them to come out at all, right? I could tell you their stories anonymously, but I couldn't say who they were because they were in hiding from domestic violence. The government has to lead by example. And this government doesn't like women. And the women that they do have seem to be cold-hearted women. So they don't. Anne Ruston just sees me as another person to go on a cashless debit card because, my drug dealer's going to be getting all the money. Because I find that so bloody infuriating and insulting. That how dare she say something like that and just make a generalised statement about all of us. And then we have International Women's Day. Hello? I don't feel the love. I don't feel the respect. I don't feel anything about anything. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. This is my personal opinion on it. It means nothing to me because I've never been included in it because I'm not of the class that is included in it. Right? Women in poverty, women with disabilities, women on a cashless debit card, Indigenous women, right? Women fleeing domestic violence. We've never really been part of the conversation. We've been service providers get paid well. The poverty industry makes a lot of money off of us. You know what I mean? But, yeah. I don't know. I just thought I'd come and have a chat and I don't understand these faces sitting here. I don't connect with those women that are I don't connect with any of those women because they don't connect with me. They would walk past me in the street and sneer at me. And that's what I've had from them in the past. So how can I connect with these women that are standing up, going on about all of this stuff, when I know that I don't fit into their mould? I'm not part of that club. And that's how I feel, you know what I mean? That's just how I've been made to feel for years. I can only talk about how I've been made to feel. And it's tiring, it really does. get tiring. And my words are not as articulate as I'd like them to be. I was thinking about this before I came live, and it's I can't seem to express it professionally enough. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Except for International Women's Day, it seems to be only for a certain class of women. And yeah. Well, I don't know what else to say about that. I'll have a look at the comments here and see. Our social security system needs a complete overhaul. And I've said it before, we need individualised payments so that people, with, especially women with disabilities, aren't disadvantaged when they enter into a relationship. It puts a lot of people off of getting into a relationship. Who'd want to get married when you know that you're going to be totally reliant on your partner, and if you've got the wrong one like I did, he's going to end up resenting you for it? You know what I mean? You don't want that. You want to be autonomous, financially autonomous. So in order to have that, we need a social security system that recognises that. And, you know, so payments should be paid for a citizen, not based on your income and not means tested against that other person's income. But we're a long way off of that too, but we need to push for that. We do need to push for that. We are strong women. We have to be, because I'm just replying to Melissa's comment. We are women, we are strong, and we will stand up. We've been standing up for years. Still don't get heard. Legislation still doesn't get done to protect us. It gets done to become punitive and used against us. Certain politicians don't like the way women are. Do you know what I mean? And certain politicians believe that women should be barefoot and pregnant in the house and shouldn't have a voice. And they transfer that into policy. And then they create policies that, you know, hurt women, that oppress women and suppress women. Do you know what I mean? And then they turn around and say, tell your daughters they can be anything you like. But as soon as they do stand up and express themselves, shh, don't rock the boat. Shh, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. You know? My mum was very much of, oh, don't say that, don't do that, don't rock the boat. She was a lovely woman. Everybody loved my mum. She was a little soft woman. She'd give you everything she could. But if she was here to see me doing this, I'd be getting kicked all the time. You're too loud. You can't say that. Because my mum came from the boomer era and her mum came from the Victorian era. You know? So, yeah, I'm thinking my mum would be horrified with the way I speak out. A universal basic income would give women financial independence. Yeah, if it was done right, but we need, in order to do something like that, a universal basic income needs to be enshrined constitutionally so that it cannot be messed with, right? Because it can be used as a power tool. So, okay, my idea of a universal basic income is enough to cover all of your basics. And, you know, so you've got your rent, your food, electricity, your transport, your medicines, your basics. So you're not having to stress. You take stress out of people's lives. You take a lot of illness out of people's lives because their mental well-being means that they can focus on living. They can pursue other things that are more fulfilling for them. And you'll get more productivity out of a person who loves their job or who can do more, who has the freedom to do that, right? But the danger with a universal basic income is if you had somebody like the LNP in charge of it, can you imagine the constraints that they would put on it, the mutual obligations that they would put on it. They would have people working slave labour, you know, to earn that piddly little bit. Whereas to me, it would give the freedom to some people who are working 60 hours a week to be able to work 30 hours a week. That would give somebody who's got no hours a week to work 30 hours a week, or two people work 15 hours a week. You've got so many intricacies in human nature and the way we're all different. We all function differently. We have a lot of people that are not employable, not because, how can I say it? We have a percentage of the population that will never be employed because they don't look right. They don't have the right IQ. They don't speak right. They don't get past the 15-second test of judgment. But they might be high IQ. They might be gifted musically, artistically. You could give those people a universal basic income, and then you could help them with what their passion is and what they could do, and they would surprise you, because they could be painters, they could be artists, they could be musicians, and they could do those things to earn extra money, and they would be safe. That's my idea of a universal basic income, is, you know, people could earn income above what society keeps you safe. Do you know what I mean? And the productivity, all right, would, dental care must go on to Medicare. But the productivity you would get from people would be better. But corporates don't like that. The capitalist system can't handle that. Do you know what I mean? And I can't see a capitalist neoliberal government ever approving of such a scheme where it gave people freedom. Because that's what it would do. It would give you mental freedom and financial autonomy and independence. And then when people have got freedom to choose and do things, they're not quite so easily to be controlled, because then they can pursue education more. They've got time to learn more, read more, explore more, live more. You know what I mean? Whereas at the moment, the majority of the people are work, drone, get up, go to work, go to sleep, go up, go to work, pay the bills. It's just monotonous. You know what I mean? And because of the way capitalist system is working, inflation is off the charts, living standards are dropping, housing is becoming a rarity. It's getting to the point where even our ordinary low-paid workers can no longer afford housing in their towns. You know, there's so much more that we need to be able to do, but heaven forbid an LNP neoliberal government will never look at Nordic systems or look at Europe or look at any other systems that create some sort of equality along the way. Do you know what I mean? And women always get stomped on, and we're always the ones that pick up the pieces when everything falls apart at the end of the day. So, I don't know. I don't know what else to say to you guys out there. Work for the dole needs to go completely. People who cheer it on, oh, they need to work more, work for the dole. Why? You want that as the new minimum wage? You want to replace your wages with work for the dole wages? And bear in mind, work for the dole completely undoes 120 years of union sacrifices, people who have sacrificed, because it comes with no award wages, no workers' protections, no superannuation contributions, and no work cover if anything goes wrong. You know, isn't that an employer's dream, right? To have a worker that's completely on $5 an hour, and you don't have to worry about any of the things that another worker doing the same job under an award system, right? Yeah, we have capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich, and that needs to change. Yeah, because you'll always hear LNP, Tories and Republicans say how bad socialism is, but they're all in it. They've got their fingers in the pies, their troughs are, you know, their snouts are in the troughs, getting as much socialism as they can. They get as much government grants and they get what they want. I think the most sickening thing with this government is how they treat our age pensioners, how they treat poor people, how they treat our homeless, right? They don't care that families are going without. They get their $181 a day meal allowance, $273 a night accommodation allowance, which they've managed to wangle it so that their houses in Canberra are in their wife's name and they can pay it to their wife and it goes off their mortgages. You know, and their pensions aren't means tested. You know what I mean? So their pensions are not means tested. They can take their pension when they leave and then they can go and get another job and they still get their pension without it being means tested. They don't have the same restraints. They have higher superannuation compared to the rest of the country, right? And then on top of that, well, that's even worse because women don't have as much superannuation as men. I don't have any super. I'm screwed, you know what I mean? Because at the time when super came in was at the time I got injured at work. And I was out of the workforce. I had nothing. There was nothing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, International Women's Day. I can't connect. I don't know how to connect with them because they've never connected with me. You know what I mean? And that's my opinion. You know, vulnerable women never get heard. I don't know. We can just... I don't know what to say. There are strong women out there that are trying really hard. Don't get me wrong. There is strong women out there trying really hard. And there's people like on my news feed all this week, Justine Elliott's been out there screaming at the top of her lungs. She's the member for Tweed, right? Trying to get help in for people. And, you know, in the floods, in the Lismore and all around her area and stuff like that. Yeah, so all we can do is keep plodding along, keep going and not shut up and hopefully things will change in the next century. I won't be here to see it, but anyway, there's got to come a day where something's got to give and where people have got to understand, respect your mum, you know what I mean? Respect your sister, respect your mother and respect your grandparents. Something's gone really wrong in our society, especially in the last 30 years. The neoliberal system has just focused everybody on money, greed, and me. And it's got to change. Anyway, that's my gripe for the night. I really didn't, yeah. You know, yeah, what else can I say? This Kat says it's extremely hard when you're a single mother with a disability and no family support. Yep, been there, done that. On top of when my dad passed, trying to look after a 62-year-old heart patient as well. And then when she passed, my world fell apart completely. And then, yeah, I still do everything you can. You just get up and go. Which I did. I got up and went. I packed as much as I could in my car and I left South Australia and I drove up here. Some people said I was stupid. Some people said I had balls. I came up here not knowing what. I had 8 weeks stay organised and then we had nowhere to go. And then we moved 11 times in 12 months, you know, before we got settled anywhere. But we were 8 years in transitional housing for homeless, and then I ended up, the card was going to come into the area, and I literally had to throw my daughter out of home, get her to Brisbane so she could do the diploma she wanted, so she didn't get stuck on the card. She had a job in Hervey Bay, but she would have been stuck on the card as well, and I couldn't do that to her. So, excuse my messages. Hang on, I'll just let somebody know I'm live. Yeah, so I meant that my daughter's down there and I'm up here, and neither the two will meet because I've seen her like 4 times in 4 years. It's like, this is crazy. She can't afford to get to me, and I can't afford to get to her. And that's just the way it is. Thank God for the internet. You know? So, yeah. Scary world we live in with... Yeah. Oh, I'm probably feeling it a little bit more because I'm on my own up here. And with what's going on with my health, it's what am I going to do? I live on my own and I have to think, well, there's lots of other women in my situation. Who knows? Anyway. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to say goodnight and take care of yourselves. And, yeah, we need to change so much so that all women are included in International Women's Day. Right? Not just those that go for the fancy breakfasts and have good jobs, and all of us need to be included. All right, guys. No. See ya.